wonder what reason you give for getting out the door or turning on the TV or opening your laptop to be meeting with your church family. Well, how are we going, church? We're in 1 Corinthians 14, the latter section, as we conclude Paul's thinking as he addresses why we should gather and, what our attitude should be as we gather. Now, it's a bit of a kick in the guts because he's addressing a church here that is meeting physically, and we're not. We're meeting on Zoom, we're meeting on YouTube, we're doing all those other things, but the principle is still the same. Why would we bother logging on? What should be our primary driving motivation for doing that? Well, let's have a look at what God's word tells us. Paul writes, verse 26, "What then, brothers? When you come together, each one has a hymn, a lesson, a revelation, a tongue, or an interpretation. Let all things be done for building up. Let all things be done for building up." Now, maybe it's just me, but I have noticed that in the world that we live in, one of the primary questions that people ask when it comes to any sort of deal or any sort of reason for doing anything is the question that's being asked is, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? That when people make a decision as to when they go out somewhere or to enter into a contract or a deal, the question they first ask is, what's in it for me? What can I get out of it? How's it going to benefit me? It's all about me. And unfortunately, I think this thinking can also seep into the way that we think about gathering as a church, can't it? So too often can we fall into the trap of before we step out the door on a Sunday or before we log on to that Zoom meeting, we're asking, what's in it for me? How am I going to get anything out of it? And often we go, I'm not going to get anything out of it, so I won't bother. But is that the way that God teaches us here in his word? I don't think so. Because it says here, let all things be done for building up. Let all things be done for building up. That when we come together, we should have an attitude of, how can I be someone who enters into this thing so that I may help build up? Now, we want to follow this way of thinking, don't we? Because it makes sense. This is the attitude of Christ, that he who came not to be served, but to serve. Jesus, as he put on flesh, as he was born into a manger, as he lived and he died in our place and rose again to new life, he did that with an attitude of wanting to serve us and give himself to us, didn't he? Christ wasn't primarily asking, as he became a baby in a manger, he wasn't primarily asking, what's in it for me? He was looking to see how he could serve his people. So church, I hope and pray that our attitude, we would continue to grow in this attitude of how we can be doing all things for building up. That instead, when it comes to logging on to maybe a Zoom meeting or being a part of a gospel community or even gathering together again, we don't primarily ask what's in it for me, but we ask what is in this that I can give? How can I be a part of this meeting today and seek to strengthen and seek to encourage someone, seek to comfort someone? Maybe it's just one person. Let's grow in this, church.